Yeah. I don't really have anything overly new to say about our team. I do want to know. I do want to say, and I've actually haven't said at the last few press conferences, and I apologize for it, but I do want to congratulate Coach Bradbury. I know I'm not as on social media and things like that where I can convey things outside of our program very often outside of these instances here, but obviously the season he's having, and he had a very similar year last year. I see Mike every day or close to it and talk to him frequently, but I haven't had a chance just publicly on behalf of our program to just congratulate the women on such a terrific season so far. So I think that's been great, not only for them, but for all of us with the Lobo Athletic Department, just to see a team out there doing really well and competing for a championship. So I do want to make sure I say that before I get going. As far as us, again, not a whole lot to do. We just played 2 days ago, play again tomorrow. We've just been really in a combination of wrapping up the Fresno game and kind of learning and teaching some things from that game and trying to grow from it, as well as on just kind of a quick turnaround, getting ready for the San Diego State game. I know the game is a later game on a weeknight, which I'm not overly fond of. I don't know how many people really are, but it is what it is. It's San Diego State. It's the team that ended our season last year and obviously beat us pretty handily at their place earlier this year. And we have to bounce back not only from that, but our past game and come up with a much better effort in order to give ourselves a chance to win. They're very talented. I think everybody knows that. Jalen McDaniels is a terrific player and is everything I think a lot of people think that he is. Devin Watson is a tremendous point guard. Hemsley's obviously another veteran guard, and I think just starting with those three, I kind of said it in the preseason, I felt with these guys, to just have two senior guards with the minutes they've had at this level and then a real kind of premier big man is just a great place to start. And I think some of their other players around them, these younger, talented kids they have, are really starting to play better. I think, Shackle and Mensa are number 2 and number 3 in our league in offensive rating right now. So, they've gotten some really good contributions from some guys outside of the ones that going into the year I think everybody thought were going to be good players. So, very good team. We're going to do everything we can to improve and grow with what we're doing, but then obviously prepare for San Diego State and what they're very good at, and hopefully give ourselves a good chance to win the basketball game.
You commented on the 9 p.m. starts, and you're not fond of it. This obviously has to do with ESPN getting to kind of broadcast this game to the country. Is the Mountain West even getting what it wants out of this in terms of networking and marketing and getting the brand out there when the games are dying down? I mean, San Diego State, New Mexico used to be a 15,000 every time kind of game, whether it was here or there, and you guys are going to be around 10,000 probably. Is it past the time where the branding of getting on ESPN is worth it?
Yeah, I probably have a lot of answers to that in my own thoughts, but quite honestly, it's not my decision. I don't make those decisions. I don't know if the coaches in our league get a lot of input on those decisions. I think that's an administrative thing at a leadership level, well above us. So my comments really have either been shared already in a forum that maybe means even more to the decision making and doesn't necessarily mean much. And I think I'm probably speaking on behalf of a lot of coaches. We're just coaching our basketball teams. That's our job, and I think that's kind of the box we're put in. I think the league as itself has their own kind of leadership and decision making structure, and I don't really have a ton to do with that.
Well, aside from you not being able to do anything about it, what kind of crowd do you expect, and how important in a rivalry game like this, and in this league,
Yeah.
this is a rivalry,
Gosh.
is it to have this crowd behind you?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think, this season obviously hasn't gone the way so far we would have wanted, and probably maybe a lot of our fans would have wanted. And I keep expecting that to kind of show up at the gate. But they've continued to come out and really support us this year, and it's been amazing. I can't even begin to tell you, when you go around our league or you go to other games on the road and you look at their crowds of teams either having great years or teams historically that maybe have been like us and maybe they're not getting the same crowds, and we come home and we're still getting crowds. I mean, just how unique that is, and kind of today's sports culture for us to be drawing the way we do says so much about this community. It's passion for basketball. It's passion for the Lobos. And hopefully that'll continue tomorrow night. I'm blessed. We're blessed to have the fans that we do, particularly in spite of maybe the way our season's gone. And like I said, especially in comparison to some of these other programs, even like the one you mentioned, and just kind of the things that they're facing and maybe not even having the same years that we're having.
Coach, this far into the conference schedule, and there's been a little bit of a struggle. What have you seen from your guys that has you encouraged?
I think our practices are open. You'll be there today. I think we practice well, and it's been a theme for us all year where I leave a shoot around. I leave the practice the night before. I leave a practice afternoon. I go home and say, man, like we're doing a lot of good things. Like we're still progressing. We have good energy. We compete. We do a lot of things. And unfortunately, we get into the games and we're just not able to duplicate that consistently over 40 minutes. And I'd like to sit here and say it's all on me, which I've done a lot of. But I think there's just kind of some things, whether it's experience, whether it's chemistry, whether it's just things that maybe haven't gone our way that have kind of taken a little bit of wind out of sails at times, but we just haven't been able to go out and do it on the court competitively in a game for 40 minutes. So I think as long as those other things are happening, you still feel confident that, hey, we can still get there. Because if you start going home from practice, well, man, these guys have packed in, or man, like we're down right now, or gosh, but I don't, we still do that. We just haven't been able to kind of push through and do that competitively on a floor and we've done it at times. I think we can all remember the games that it has, but not consistently enough this season.
Coach, from watching the film, what have been your biggest takeaways defensively the last 10 minutes of the game against Fresno? What they struggled to slow down?
Yeah, I think one-on-one for sure. Taylor's exceptional. I think first half, for whatever of the game, I think we did a pretty good job. He had that and one right there before halftime, which that last possession before half, for better or for worse, as far as offense, defense, probability, improbable, whatever it may be, it's just kind of gone against us this year. We've had some buzzer beaters. We've had obviously a great play by Taylor. We've had some turnovers. We've just done some things there, right, that last possession of the half. And then, we'll go out and practice last possession of the half in practice, and we'll do great. And unfortunately, we get in those games, and we just can't quite execute the things in the game that we do well under what we're trying to make very competitive elements of practice. And I thought that kind of maybe got him going and even got them going a little bit. And I thought just in general, him and Huggins were terrific. And part of the problem with them is you can't just key in on them because the other players are so good. I thought Grimes' ability around the rim at both ends of the floor really bothered us, not only with the rebounding, but also the finishing at both ends. And those guys as a whole were really good. And I think playing San Diego State, you have the same concerns because they have an elite big man like they did, and they've got very good guards like Fresno did. And when you're kind of balancing that act of trying to contain really good players on the other team with that kind of balance, it's a tremendous challenge to do consistently for 40 minutes. You can have some stretches where some things work and then they make adjustments and you try to adjust, but eventually sometimes good players are just they're good basketball players.
Well, I know it's always the game ahead that matters, but
yeah.
When you look at halfway through the season now, look at the rest of conference season, look at the rest of the schedule. Do you rearrange your goals at this point where you can put yourselves for the tournament?
Not really. It's nothing we ever really talked about last year, to be honest with you, or this year. Right now, all we're talking about is trying to beat San Diego State. Wherever the standings leave us, whoever wins or loses other games, or even the record of who you're playing, it's nothing we ever really talk much about. All we can control is our own games. They haven't necessarily all gone the way we would have really wanted or expected. But all we can do now is take control of the next one and do everything we can to try and beat San Diego State tomorrow.
Are you concerned at all when you look at the schedule that some of the players might look and see San Jose State twice, and we get Wyoming?
Somebody else brought that up to me, I think last week. I hope not. You know what I mean? That's not something I talk about. That's not something, I guess if they do on their own time, I can't stop. I would hope all they're thinking about right now is San Diego State, because that's not all I'm thinking about, and that's all our practices and film sessions and meetings are all going to be geared towards, as well as everything right now is about San Diego State.
You talked about some of the intangible things not carrying over from practice, like experience and chemistry or things like that. Is there anything that you look at from a pure basketball standpoint, or in terms of not making the right halftime adjustments or guys not responding to halftime adjustments that you point to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as a coach, that's all you do every day. What have I done wrong? What can I do differently? What can we do to make our team better? Grading out a game in a myriad of ways, and finding ways to make them more productive, more efficient. It's something that as a coach, that's all I can do. I can't sit here and lament over someone maybe missing shots that I think should go in, or blaming this or blaming that. Really, that's really all I try and do every single day, is learn from things and try and continue to put this team in the best place it can be to win.
At the beginning of the season, the team was struggling with defense, and now you're switching up defense a little bit. You're working on different types. But the offense seems to be suffering. There seems to be periods where the Lobos just can't get anything in. Do you feel like maybe the team is kind of young and wasn't able to handle all the challenges that they were going to face and all the fixes we needed to do?
That's a great question. It's one I've asked myself, my staff, colleagues, opponents, coaches, you name it. And at the end of the day, I think when you just look at the production of our guys individually as part of the whole, it's just quite not where it should be. And that's probably a combination of a lot of things, myself, them, the inexperience, the chemistry, whatever it may be. You look at, I think right now, the top 40-ish players in our conference from an offensive perspective and their ratings offensively, we have 1 in there right now. Last year we had 6. San Diego State has 5. Nevada has 5. We had a lot of guys last year really produce and do some good things offensively, and the reality is right now we have 1. So we've got to find a way, collectively as a team, me as a coach, them as a player, to get more guys into that top half. If you look and really go through the top 40 or so players in our league and kind of break them down, it really is by standings. Like the people that have the most are really good teams, and the teams that have the least are the teams sitting at the bottom right now. And I've got to find a way to get our players up more, and as do they individually as well. So I think when we do that, like last year's team had, you're a very good offensive basketball team. But unfortunately right now, we're just not. And our defense is actually better than last year's defense. It's better in a myriad of categories: rebounding, field goal percentage. The turnovers are down a little bit, but our steal numbers aren't really off that much. We're doing some decent things defensively, enough to give us a chance to win. The problem is this has become, Nevada's got the best offensive team in the league this year. They had it last year. They had it the year before. The second best team in the league right now offensively is Utah State. This has become a league where you've got to be able to put points up. And right now we're just not being able to do that. Now, can we flip the script and become this dominant defensive team and potentially win that way? It's possible. We're trying, obviously. And maybe that there's more room for growth there than there is offensively. But even as I say that, we're going to have to score points. We're just going to have to if we want to kind of get this thing turned.
Coach, it seemed like in the early going, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. Have you stepped back to look at this thing and let it be what it is? And if so, how is that serving you?
Yeah, a little. I think when the season's over, you look back at things you did as a coach, what worked, what didn't work. When I look back on it now, part of the reason I'm trying to be more that way is, I might have contributed more to maybe some of the losses going on because I was adding pressure and I was adding, feelings and punishments and consequences to things that last year's team really embraced that maybe, quite honestly, this year's team just wasn't really embracing. So I've tried to be, it's the most positive I've ever been. This is the most uplifting I've ever been. This is the most confidence building I've ever tried to be, much more so than last year's team, because this year's team, quite honestly, is different. And I think me embracing that is something you have to do authentically. I don't think you can fake it. So I'm genuinely trying to live that myself as well and do things maybe that ordinarily I would have never done before. But I just feel like right now with this team, maybe it's something they need, because the path that I was going down and the way I was trying to get them to flip on things and get them to kind of play the way I wanted to play just wasn't quite it wasn't working. It wasn't responding the way I want. So we've gone down this road. I actually don't think our effort has been poor. We've just had some issues putting the ball in the hoop, and maybe that just means it's got to go in a few times, and then we'll start feeling a lot better about ourselves. Maybe it's just going to be a game coming around the corner here where it's going to get things going. And I think the only way to definitely get there is me to continue to just foster good emotions and good vibes around the squad.
Coach, both teams in the first half, neither team could make threes, and then all of a sudden in the second half they stopped, but you guys continued to shoot. Were you thinking that maybe we were forcing threes, we couldn't, their defense was that good, or what was the reason?
Great question. I've been asked a lot that since the game, and I think it's a very good question to ask. I mean, obviously, I think, they have, some really good one-on-one basketball players that can really go and create offense and make things happen. This year's team, I think Keith has a little bit of that ability where he can really break down one-on-one offensively. We don't, they can spread the floor and let Deshaun Taylor play a little bit. Very similar. We could do some things like that last year with Antono. We had some different things offensively, but this year's team really, Keith's probably the only guy we have that can just kind of break down and go make something maybe when things aren't going very well. So without that, or with only that, it just puts a lot of pressure in other areas. And we've talked so much about turnovers here of late, and we talked a lot going into this game of like, hey guys, we got to get shots on the rim. We can't afford turnovers. We can't afford to get their transition going. So I think a combination of those things, I think guys being a little fearful of maybe doing too much and turning the ball over and saying, hey, let's just get a shot at the rim. I think the inability of just having guys that can really break things down and make things easier for other guys. I mean, Grimes was terrific, but Grimes, they didn't run a play for him. It was all off of other guys, other things. We don't have necessarily a ton of that ability to get those guys going through that way as well. We got to do it the old-fashioned way. We got to cut, we got to screen, we got to pass, we got to dribble, we got to move. And there are times where we're trying to do that and it doesn't go our way. And then unfortunately times we don't do that and it doesn't go our way. So I think as you add all that up, sometimes you can get into some stretches where you're shooting too many of them, particularly quick ones. And we've got to eliminate those. We've got to play good team basketball. If that means at times we shoot some, maybe more than we should, then we will. But as long as that comes at the end of a good team offensive possession where multiple guys are passing and cutting and moving and playing the right way, and then at the end of that, if we have to take a three because nothing else has really presented itself, I can kind of live with that. I like the three-point shot. I always will. But some of the ones we obviously took during those stretches, I think were a combination of things I just discussed, and that's sometimes going to really start to lead the other way, which it did.
Paul, do you see just individuals becoming better basketball players? Not at the end of the day, it's about the results, but do you see players growing?
I think we've had some grow. I think, unfortunately, we've had some that have not. And that's something that I think and talk about. And those are probably more March conversations and end of season kind of programmatic things. I think there's some guys that have shown some really good moments or flashes of moments of being able to turn into something consistently good, but maybe haven't for inexperienced youth. That's part of the growth process along the way. But let's be honest, there's been some guys that haven't had the seasons we would have wanted so far. There's a lot of basketball left, so hopefully when you look back on it in the end of the year, you look at maybe some peaks and valleys along the way, and the valleys were a little smaller than they seemed at the time, and they'll flesh out a little bit more towards hopefully a better mean overall. Because right now, we're struggling a little bit with certain guys.
Coach, Vance got off to a really slow start, seemed to find more success when he penetrated more. What did you make of his overall performance, and how surprising was it to see him go 1 of 11 from 3 when he was getting some pretty good looks?
Yeah, no, Vance is he's a really talented player. I think he had a certain role at UConn. He shot a lot of threes. We knew that coming in. He came here to expand his game, to grow his game, to mature as a basketball player and as a person. And he's had that opportunity here. He's shooting way more 2-point shots than he ever shot at UConn, way more. And I think he's working through the growth of that process and what's a good one and what's a bad one. I think he'll be even the first one to admit at times maybe he struggles with the selection of that. As a result, his percentages, particularly in conference, are really, really dropping right now. I think a little bit of that might just be the fatigue of being that guy all year long and having that burden on his shoulders to go and make those decisions consistently night in and night out. He's a sophomore. He's working through it. I think he's got tremendous potential as long as he keeps his mind in a good place and we keep coaching and teaching every day. Eventually, he'll turn that corner. I think there's a lot of great players in our league. There's a lot of first-team all-conference guys, second-team all-conference guys, all that stuff. And invariably, they're all seniors. They just are. And Vance, I think, is just going through a period that they all went through at some point of their careers. He's just going through it right now and kind of become the face of some things that might be a little bit unfair to him, but nevertheless is the one that he chose and the one that, he's going through right now.
Different sport, obviously, but are you in awe of Bill Belichick's ability to be so much better at the chess match versus the other coach that it's almost embarrassing? Is there any lessons for a coach like you to learn from that, or any coach in general?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I didn't watch the game. I obviously heard about the game. Football to me is much, much different than basketball. I draw a lot of parallels. I study a lot of football coaches, particularly from like a culture perspective, but, they're just one possession games, over and over and over again. So I think that chess match is genuine because it's 12 or 11 or 12 guys on the field. There you go. CFL's 12. 11 guys on a field, every single possession, playing all that. Basketball, to me, you're going up and down. There's a lot more flow. There's a lot more rhythm. There's a lot more freedom of things to kind of go with. And I embrace that part of it. I'm not a guy that wants to micromanage the game, walk it up, run this, run that, do this defensively, do that defensively. I like the free-flowing, up-tempo game of basketball where you can allow guys to kind of be players and succeed that way. It worked very well at times in my career, and obviously this year's been a little different for us. So we've had to maybe manage it a little bit more than I ever have, and not something we were necessarily doing initially by design, but something we've kind of fell into. I think as you fall into that, you'll get into those kind of more chess match kind of things that you're kind of discussing. And obviously in the game last night, I guess, the coach or the game plan they put in place was, potentially better than the other one. So hats to them. And I guess when we get into those kinds of games and stuff, there are games that maybe go our way or don't go our way.
Paul, I don't want to bring up Lyle as excuse me, got a little thing to do.
Yeah.
Lyle's an excuse, but everything that we're talking about that are issues, someone to break down the defense and make plays, someone to stop the guards as they penetrate, all that circles around not having a point guard. Did you think going into the season after Jaquan got hurt that it was going to be this tough to find a guy?
I think at the time, I remember telling everyone at the time, I thought it would affect us offensively. I remember saying, I think this will affect us offensively more than defensively. And the season started and our offense was doing very, very well. So it almost kind of got a little bit swept under the rug a little bit, even with myself going, you know what, we're okay. But I think as the season has gone on and everyone has kind of really keyed in on Anthony and just kind of made us play certain ways offensively, those abilities of like a passer and just a functional and even just sometimes experience. Jaquan he played 2 full years of 30-plus minutes a game in the Big Ten. He just has a lot of reps. And unfortunately, right now, I like our talent. Like I think Vance Jackson's a very talented player. I think McQuatch is a talented player. I think Keith McGee is a talented player. Like I think we have like talented players. They're just young. Like they're sophomores going out. Like Braxton Huggins and Deshaun Taylor are 5th-year seniors. And we got guards out there who I think can play with them, but they're 2-3 years younger. They have 60, 80 games less under their belt. And I think our guys can be those guys. I think they have the ability to develop into a Deshaun Taylor, into a Braxton Huggins, into those level kind of players. They just quite aren't there, and that's where Jaquan having those years under his belt might have helped there a little bit. But we have who we have now. It's not something that really we talk about much as a team or as a staff. It's about coaching these guys, making them the best they can be, and then doing what we can to try and win tomorrow night. Thanks.